Hello everybody, this is Jon Easdon from Anglers Covey, and thank you for joining us for another fly tying video in this month's Bug of the Month. We're still talking about stillwater, and I wanted to come to you guys today and tie you a quick, simple pattern that's effective year-round in our stillwater fisheries. Now, this pattern is really cool too because you can use lots of different colored materials and kind of customize this pattern to your exact liking. Today we're just going to start out and tie a very basic balanced leech. So this is our just basic balanced leech pattern. We're going to start off with a 60-degree jig hook. I really like this Umpqua Super Jig 60 hook. This is a heavy gauge hook. It's really beasty. It's not going to bend or break on you. We're going to tie this today in a size 12. I like to tie this balanced leech in from 10 clear down to a 16. So it's a really versatile pattern. The second thing we're going to use here is some 6/0 uni thread, and I'm going to use black today. You can use any colors that you want depending on the combination of your fly. So I'm just actually going to start with a very basic thread wrap here. I don't really need to get too intense with this. I just want to get my thread started. Now, one of the unique things with this balanced leech and what makes this fly is the fact that we use a sewing pin. So this is just a 5/8 of an inch sewing pin. It's got a head on it, looks like a little nail, and I'm going to stack a 2.8 millimeter tungsten bead, and then right behind it I'm going to use a medium-sized glass bead. Now you can use any combination of beads here. You can use one bead or two. You could use multiple tungsten beads if you want. Just be very careful because this is the system that will actually make this fly a balanced fly. And what I'm going to do here is I want to anchor this sewing pin right on the back of the hook. You can see the eye of the hook sticking down here, and it may take some playing around with this to determine what length you need to have this pin at what position. But I like to, it's about 2/3 of the shank or so to about half the size of the shank seems to be about the sweet spot for me. And all I'm going to do, I'm going to hold this right on the back of the hook and do some loose wraps and just get this anchored. Once I do that, then I can move to the back of that sewing pin towards the back of the fly and anchor this whole pin in. And as you get towards the back, there's a sharp point on that pin, so you want to be real careful and not break your thread there. I'll usually spend some time and try to make a ramp up to that thread just so it's a smooth transition. And then once I do that, I'm going to come up on that sewing pin and get those beads kind of set in place. And then I'm going to wrap this all the way back to the bend of the hook, right where that sewing pin is anchored in. Now, one of the things you can do is you can take some UV or some glue here and really gub this up and get it nice and encased. And the second material we're going to use here, we're going to just use some marabou. I like these blood quills. We're going to tie this in dark olive. You can use any color that you want. I use a lot of blacks, browns. This dark olive makes kind of a cool color in a leech. When this gets wet, it gets really dark. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the end of the feather, and you can make this fly in the profile look as big as you want. I'm going to keep it pretty sparse and pretty uniform here, and I want to have about 1.5 lengths of that shank is where I want my tail. I'm going to pinch that off with my non-dominant hand and just do a couple loose wraps and get that anchored there. Then I can come in and get rid of the rest of this marabou. And then I'm just going to secure this material down. Not too worried about what it looks like right now. The next material is this material called Easdon. I love this stuff. It's really inexpensive. It's widely available. There's lots of different colors. Today we're going to use the black pearl. I like to tie this fly a lot in purple as well, and root beer. Root beer is kind of a brown color. I'm going to take a piece of that Easdon and strip off some of the end of this where I expose the rope. And I'm just gonna tie this in right where I tied that marabou in. And do a few wraps here, make sure it's nice and secure. I'm gonna wrap everything, wrap this thread clear back up to the beads. Now with this, I'm going to wrap it counterclockwise in even wraps here. I don't want any bubbles or anything in here. I just want it to be a nice even body. You're gonna go right by that jig head, do a few wraps around that jig head, and then end up right at the end of that sewing pin. I'll do a couple loose wraps just to tie this off and secure it. Do a few more wraps here. Come in and trim that guy off. There's another step that you could do here if you wanted to add some like hot pink dubbing or some orange dubbing, anything like that. You can make a little hot spotted dubbing there. A lot of times I'll just keep it just like this. It's a very basic, simple fly. And from this point, I'm just gonna come in and whip finish this a couple times, at least a couple times. And I'm doing this whip finish right behind that second bead. You can come in there with some glue too and dab some glue behind that bead and just make sure everything's contained. You can also take your scissors and trim this up if you want, but I rarely do that. I kind of like to leave it all nice and bushy and buggy. You can see that jig head poking out right through there. And this fly is really cool and effective too. If you fish it with a loop knot, you can give this fly a lot of action. What these beads do is they counterbalance the fly, and the fly will sit just like this in the water column. So with that loop knot, you can give it a lot of action. Works really well on like a mid-stripping rig or even static nymphing. But this is the basic balanced leech. As always, if you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, come into the shop, give us a call, drop a comment. We're happy to help you. And just a heads up for next month, for June Bug of the Month, we're going to be talking about PMDs, and we got a lot of really fun stuff in store for you guys. So thank you for joining us, and as always, we'll see you next time.